Hey, Dr. Natter here from Worthy Entrepreneurs. So today I want to talk to you guys about what has been going through in my head and what we were going through actually at my current practice. And I think it's one of those things where as entrepreneur, we try to identify our self-worth with the success that we have accumulated based on how our business is doing. And if you follow my story, we had a really big year. I've only been in business for 5 years. And last year was the first time we actually crushed and then crossed a 7-figure mark. And, I was in a really, really high place. And I feel like I was like, oh man, like I'm really doing really well. I'm helping a lot of people. I have a big team. We can actually create a good impact. And that made me feel really worthy and really fulfilled. And then on recent month, especially on May 3rd, it was actually the anniversary of my death, I found out that we were actually having some cash flow issue, as in like somehow billing, were going unresolved and we weren't getting enough cash coming in. And this has given me like the biggest pit in my stomach just because I didn't know what I was going up against. And, from the one day to the next, I was on like the highs, the mountaintop. And then the next day, within less than 24 hours, I was at the lowest of the lows. And I've never felt anything like this before. And the reason I choose to share this is because I know there's so many of us that's going through this right now. Because how we define our success, our worthiness, is based on the outcome of what our business has bring on to us. So far, it's been a little bit over a month and a half. And I've actually have worked my way through and worked my way out of that state. I just want to share a couple of things I've learned so far for those who are listening that could be really helpful. Number one, the biggest thing that helped me is that I like to think of the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario for me in life was always thinking about death, right? So if the worst case is death, then if you are okay with that, then everything else in the middle is kind of less as intense, right? So I always like to think about, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? If I were to lose my business, what would that look like? And then based on that worst thing, rather than just sitting there panicking about it, I say, okay, if I were to lose this, how would I come out of it, right? So I start formulating a plan. Okay, if I lose the business, here's how I would come out of it. Here's what I would do. Here's the kind of business I would start. Here's how I would go back. Here's how I would build again, right? And then I would move on. Okay, if that was not the worst case scenario, if the worst case scenario is that I lose X amount % of business and I actually have to lay people off, what would that look like? Then I start walking through different scenarios. And these are extremely uncomfortable thought exercises that I was going through in the middle of the night just because I couldn't sleep. I was in a state of panic. So rather than just being in a state of panic and not doing anything about it, I just thought of ways of how would I crawl my way out of the situation I was in. So, we're at the point where I'm like, oh man, like this could actually be done and be over within the next few months if I don't do anything about it. So it was in a really sticky situation. And the one thing I kept saying to myself as I'm going through different scenarios, like, well, the reason this happened is because I've never accomplished anything like this before. And because I've never accomplished anything like this before, I've never faced such problem of this degree, right? So it's a good problem to have, but it's also a problem nonetheless, right? And if you are someone who likes to hike, it's almost like if you summit the mountaintop and then you look, there's another mountaintop that you have to summit again. But when you are going through the higher mountaintop, guess what? It's harder, it's steeper, the air gets thinner, so it's harder to breathe, right? But guess what? If you do it more and more and you do it enough time, your body will adapt to that kind of stress. So I try to reframe it as a positive stress, as a positive lesson that I needed to learn in order for me to grow into the next better version of myself. And I always look at it as like, hey, this is a new chapter that I have to do, right? So think about the worst possible scenario and finding solution to overcome them. That gave me a lot of peace. Second thing, this is more like something that I've never done before and I'm actually really happy I started doing, is that I started doubling down on my health. And most people would say, oh, well, if your business is not doing well, you just go on in your business. And the way I looked at it is say, okay, what can I do to make this situation worse? And I list out, say, the situation would be worse if I ignore and do nothing. The situation would be worse if I don't take care of my health and I get sick, right? The situation would be worse if my personal life is horrible and I don't have good conversation, good marriage with my wife. And the situation would be worse if I don't communicate this with my team of how we can address this. So I knew that I need to talk to my team. I need to talk to my wife about the situation, what's going on. And lastly, the one thing I have the biggest control over was my health. What I need to do to double down on my health so that way I can withstand the stress that I'm going through and that my body would not collapse. So if you guys watched my previous video about the routine that I've learned from all these billionaires mentor that I have, I went and I doubled out on that even more. So I actually make sure I meditate and I walk outside way more, especially when I'm starting going to in my head. So rather than sitting there and then just soak into the pity party that I created for myself, because it was an invitation of one, I just say, let me just get up, let me go walk outside, get some sunlight exposure, and then let me come back and try to figure it out. So there's something really cool about walking and processing problem at the same time. So I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but the process of walking is like you moving towards something, a certain destination, and in your head, you're also trying to problem solve, which is find solution, aka moving towards a solution that you have not yet come across yet. So by doing both simultaneously, I feel like I was just like Frodo walking toward Mordor. I have an objective, a clear defined goal, which is the problem I don't want to have, and I'm trying to work through the solution. And as the more I walk, the more solution I have. I'm just like, okay, good. We're in a good momentum, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I was able to solve problem more, and I get my steps in. Another thing is that I make sure that I don't do what I normally do, which is I just pity eat. So I would just go and normally I would just go eat sweets, cheeseburger, all the cheat meal stuff that I enjoy, but it would be over the edge. I would consume way more just because I was feeling my loathe of myself. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that, but what can I do to make myself be in a better state? So I would actually go and get, Whole Food has this family size salad. I would buy 3 tubs of those. And that just means I have a week worth of salad that I get to eat, right? So if I can eat well, that means I wouldn't feel like crap. If I don't feel like crap and add on to more stress, that I can think clearly. So I make sure I double down on my nutrition. I make sure I drink enough water. I make sure I take all my supplement, right? And the most incredible thing for me was I make sure I go to the gym almost every single day. Whether it's to work out, do my resistance exercise, do my zone 2 cardio, or just to do some yoga, do some stretching. I make sure I was moving. Because to me, again, going back to walking, moving helped facilitate positive reinforcement and get that dopamine hit. And when I get all that aggression out, all that frustration out, and I'm moving towards something, I can think clearly. And you guys already heard about my hack when I'm working out. I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts at 1.5 to 2x speed. And then as I'm working out, as I'm going in between set, I have my note app up. I just take notes on all the things I'm learning. And I'm not learning just for sake of learning. It's not mental masturbation. It's like I'm learning and actively looking for ways to solve the problem that I have, right? So it all tied in together. If I know my worst case scenario and how to crawl out of it, and I know that if I'm protecting my body, my energy, and I'm actively seeking solution from people who have done it before, so I'll listen to people who have, build businesses, lost them, build them back again, lost them, build them again. So these are the people I look after, right? Because I don't want to look after someone who have done it one time. I want to look after someone that have done it, lost it, do it again, lost it, did it again, right? So all these are people that I completely admire. So I'll listen to like Myron Golden, I'll listen to Russell Brunson, I'll listen to Alex Hormozi, right? I'll listen to my mentor, Paul Goff. So like all these things that I really pay attention to, I try to extrapolate the lesson I've learned and apply to where I am right now. So double down on my health, double down on my education. And lastly, the biggest thing is I make sure I was home every single night and carve out an hour or two just to be there and talk to my wife about what we're going through, what I'm going through. And, that's probably brought us so much closer within the past few months than we ever had within the past few years, right? Because I can actually lean on her and be vulnerable and talk to her and have her give me, advice. Because honestly, no one knows me better than she does. And to have that support system make me feel like no matter how bad the situation is, I'm already blessed, right? I have my health, I have my relationship, and whatever happened, I'll be okay. I can always come back from that. So if you guys are listening to this and you're going through some stuff like this right now, please feel free to reach out. I know it's not easy, especially if you're building your business and you're doing it alone and you're losing your self-worthiness. Just understand that your self-worth has nothing to do with your business. And it's a good way for me to learn how to attach that for myself. Because at the end of the day, when it's my time to go, I'm not gonna look back of how many businesses I built. I'm just gonna look back at all the memories I've created, the meaningful moments I have in my life, and that's what makes it a little bit more worth it to me. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you.